So Deb, if you could start. Okay, Mr. Chairman, you may begin.
Okay, do we have to do any of these readings or anything about we're all good?
Yes,
You
I
know,
will. If the meeting is called to order, then I'd be happy to read the legal notice for the record. And then I
Please
will
and thank you.
after that. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. As a result of the ongoing public health emergency related to COVID-19, Executive Order 202.1 is extended, authorizes public boards to meet remotely and take authorized actions without permitting public in-person access to meetings. The public must have the ability to view or listen to the proceedings, and the meetings must be recorded and transcribed. An audio and video recording of today's meeting will be accessible from the DASNY website within 2 days, and the proceedings will be transcribed and posted as soon as practicable under the circumstances. For any additional information regarding the emergency declaration or the executive order, please go to the DASNY website. And unless there are any questions at this point, I will conduct the roll call. We welcome any members of the public to this meeting and ask them to identify themselves for the record when called upon. So we have with us today 4 board members. We have Finance Committee Chair Romsky, Board Chair Al Carney, John Johnson, Beryl Snyder, Joan Sullivan, Janice McKinney, Tracy Raleigh. We have Russell Biggs with us also from DOH. We have President McDaniel with us, Deb Fasser, who will be controlling the technical aspects, Portia Lee, David Ostrander, Gerard Klauser, Kim Ellis, Caroline Griffin, Dina Amodio, Diane Folletti, and let me see, Matt Bergen, Paul Koopman, Ricardo Salomon, Steve Kozer, and I believe I got everyone. If I missed,
Well,
please identify yourself. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Chair. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. We have a big group in attendance today, a lot of pressure today. Anyway, we have 6 finance things on the agenda, but first up, I'm going to ask Tracy or Al to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the February meeting of the Finance Committee.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Second. Thank you. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. So the first up is going to be presented by Dave, and it's the School District Revenue Bond Financing Program. So please take it away, Dave. Thank you. Did I do that properly?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yep. Okay.
Good afternoon. The
Hi, Dave.
Finance Committee is being asked to recommend to the full board the adoption of the necessary documents to authorize multiple series of bonds in an amount not to exceed $750 million to be sold through multiple negotiated offerings on behalf of various New York State school districts. Proceeds from this authorization may be used to refinance the bond anticipation notes or bands of various New York State districts, to finance new money projects on behalf of these districts, or to refund bonds issued by DASNY through the school districts program. Although there's no, we do not anticipate a refunding at this point, this will provide us the flexibility if the opportunity presents itself later in the year. As in previous years, staff is requesting authorization to meet current demand from school districts for a new money band refinancing pool closing in June, as well as to accommodate additional demand that could occur later in the year. As we discussed with the members in the past, participation in the DASNY pool is rate driven. When school district issue bonds, they can receive building aid reimbursement from the state in one of 2 ways. School districts can issue their own general obligation bonds, in which case they receive building aid based on the statewide average. This rate, which was most recently set at 1 7/8, lags behind current interest rates since it's based on prior year's data. So it's typically beneficial for districts to issue on their own if they can finance below that statewide average rate. If the districts cannot issue below that rate, they have the option to issue through DASNY. School districts that issue through our program receive building aid based on the actual cost of borrowing. And this is typically beneficial in a rising interest rate environment. So over the last 3 years, we've seen pools that have ranged from 450 to 580 million. And at the time that those financings occurred, the interest rates were rising in relation to the statewide average. We're starting to see a similar dynamic for this 2021 pool. And as of this morning, we've received interest from about 30 school districts totaling approximately 300 million. So that number is subject to change. It could go up or down based on where rates go over the next month or so. The structure and security features will be the same as previous school district pools. This includes semi-annual payments to be made pursuant to financing agreements backed by the full faith and credit general obligation bonds of the participating districts, statutory intercept through the state comptroller of any state aid due to the districts for debt service on the bonds, as well as bond insurance if available and economically advantageous. We have used bond insurance on a number of maturities in the past. So in conclusion, to ensure that we have sufficient authorization to meet school district demand over the next year, we're asking the Finance Committee to recommend that the board adopt the necessary documents authorizing the issuance of DASNY bonds in an amount not to exceed $750 million. Mr. Chairman.
Jerry, you on?
You're on mute. You're on mute, Jerry.
This is Tracy. I think. Deb
Okay, yeah,
fixed it.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was unable to
Yeah, we were
unmute.
unable to mute for a while. We were locked in a muted world, I guess, Tracy, but nice to see you.
Same
looks like
here.
we-
Sorry, I was trying to second that first motion and I couldn't. But
Yes,
thank
no, and I was locked out myself. Anyway, but we're back in there. So any questions or concerns?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions or concerns with the proposal.
I have nothing with the proposal. I think it's great. I think though, Portia, are we gonna be getting more work because of the current environment? I remember at one point, depending on where the rates were headed.
Right, as Dave had indicated, in a rising interest rate environment, we tend to see more participation in the program, and that is the interest rate environment we're in now. So we'll see.
Well, we better staff up, right? Okay. Anyway, any other questions or concerns?
none here either.
Thank you, Trace. Well, hearing none, can I please get a motion to recommend approval of this at tomorrow's full board meeting? Although I should add, by the way, because there's a number of other board members on the call, if any of them have any questions or concerns, please feel free to jump in. But hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to recommend approval at tomorrow's full board meeting. Thank you.
So moved. Yeah.
Second.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, so that motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up is Gerard. He's going to present the Interagency Council for Developmental Disabilities offering. Thank you, Gerard.
Good afternoon,
I'm gonna
Chairman
go
Romsky,
Back on
Chairman
mute. if I can
Carney,
Figure this
and
out.
members of the Finance Committee. The transaction summary and transaction report provided to the members is seeking authorization for a resolution to proceed for the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities. This transaction will include tax exempt and or taxable, fixed and or variable rate bonds in one or more series at one or more times through a negotiated sale and or a private placement. The purpose of the financing is to refinance existing bank loans and reimburse certain institutions for cash expenditures, which are used to renovate or acquire certain properties used to provide services for the developmentally disabled. On a program level, this will be our 15th financing for the Interagency Council. This is a pooled financing with 8 participants and 29 projects. Currently, we have 24 PPA approvals of the 29, and we expect to have the 5 remaining approvals as well. They're just not in hand at the moment. And if you noticed on table 2 of the transaction report, there was a significant number in the $5 million range on the other column. That is what those 5 projects represent. So it is not expected that they will, the expectation is that we will have the approvals and that number will move over into the PPA approval column. There are sometimes some small amounts, like the ones you may see on some of the other projects, where there's slight overages above the PPA approval. Those have historically been relatively immaterial amounts. The term of the bonds is not to exceed 26 years and not to exceed $40 million. And each borrower has their own loan agreement. Having a little trouble. Okay. So sorry, I'm hung up here.
Fine, Gerard, take your time. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, okay. Okay, the security features, a pledge of all public funds attributable to each finance project. There's a standby intercept of the public funds attributable to each project. There is a debt service reserve fund of 6 months of debt service. And there will be mortgages on real property acceptable to DASNY where available. I've mentioned the PPAs, and I just want to highlight, the significance, their significance. To initiate a development, the development of a project to serve individuals with developmental disabilities, the not-for-profit provider is required to complete a certificate of need, which is reviewed by OPWDD for compliance and need. We use the term certificate of need often with a healthcare transaction, but this is not that same certificate of need. This is a certificate of need for this OPWDD project. Ultimately, the projects are supported through a contract and reimbursement arrangements with OPWDD. The state commits to support the development and operation of the project if it is completed and in conformance with the PPA. Project funding is subject to annual appropriations to sufficient monies by the state legislature. Prior property approvals are in place for 24 of the 29 projects. And I mentioned that 5 of the projects are not in place, and that's what the other column represents. The projects are expected to have a replacement operator component, and we anticipate a rating of AA3 from Moody's. The state's programs and policies demonstrate the essentiality of community-based services to the developmentally disabled population in the state of New York, and the 8 borrowers in this pool have had experience in providing needed services to this population. Accordingly, the staff report recommends that the board adopt the resolution and proceed for one or more series of bonds with maturities not to exceed 26 years and an aggregate amount not to exceed $40 million. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Any questions or concerns?
None here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I have, go ahead, Casey, you go. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask it, this, make sure I'm reading it right. This is a refinancing. Is that correct? Or is it refinancing or?
It's not a refinancing of debt. It's a refinancing of most of these are homes that have, they're basically refinancing the existing loans primarily. Yes. We're not taking out any debt, like any IGA debt or anything along those lines.
These are taxable.
It's primarily payoff, bank loan payoffs.
Bank loan payoffs, right? Okay, so it's in that vein. It's like new projects to DASNY. Yes, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yep. Understood.
Which
So
makes it a hybrid, actually, of new money and refinancing. It's an odd combination, but it makes sense. I mean, it's very rational.
Yep.
It's almost like a repayment though, right? Like
Sure.
the money's already been spent in some ways, right?
Yes, it has. it's basically what they're doing. They're you know, just like any one of us
Yeah.
would, you know, if we could refinance our loan from 5% down to 3, then
Yeah,
Right.
that's essentially what's taking place.
so there's
Yep.
savings to the entities, presumably. Is that correct, or?
Generally speaking, Gerard, I'm thinking it's refinancing of short-term loans, yes, with the banks.
I need to
Financing from the
look
banks.
closer before I answer that, but I think so, yes.
I just had a, we follow, guys, the budget, and I know no one has the crystal ball, and I don't want to jinx this, but things maybe are in a better spot than we all thought they would be in. But in regard to the funding and the finance, the funding for these various agencies, I mean, I think I read something the other day that there was some back and forth. So I guess we just have to watch it, I guess, right? That the budget, that the money's allocated is going to be sufficient enough.
Jerry, I did look at the appropriations, and within the body of the report, there's a reference. I think last year when we did this, the average appropriations over the last few years was 4.7 million. This year, I saw the expected appropriation is about 4.9 million. So when averaged over the few years, I didn't change 4.7. It was basically in line with, you know, so it's in line with what they have been.
Good. Okay. I forget where I read the report, but anyway. Okay. Thank you very much, Gerard. Any other questions, concerns from my fellow committee members or any other fellow board members?
This is a silly question, Gerard, and I apologize for it. I've actually wanted to ask it on prior occasions, but why don't they call the PPA simply a PA? You don't have to answer it now. I mean, it's a term of art. It is used to describe the necessary precondition for this approval. But is that why? Is it because it's a prior? They were approving it. It's not prior property. It's simply a prior approval.
Yeah.
Silly question.
That's my understanding. Yes, that it's a prior approval. It's not the prior property.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Forgive me. It was a silly question, but I've wanted to ask it for a long time. I wanted to.
I'll go back and I'll take a look at.
Please don't. Please don't.
No, well, one of the exercises that I go through on these transactions is I actually review the prior property approval. Back when I was in finance, I would do the same thing for the certificates of needs, and I just sort of, it helps me to better understand and to be able to tick and tie things and make a little bit better sense of it. So I will actually just look at one and see whether there's any kind of description or anything further that I might be able to share with you.
Are they all on the same kind of form? I mean, is it easy to review the prior property approval?
It is a pretty standard form, yes.
Okay, all right. Forgive me again, silly question.
No worries.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any more questions or comments about the proposal.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Anybody else? Hearing none, I'm going to recommend that, well, actually, I'm going to ask for a motion to recommend approval of this offering at tomorrow's full board meeting.
I'll move to recommend approval.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you very much, Gerard. Next
Thank
up
you.
is Steve, I believe, on a Gold Coast Public Library.
Yes, thank you. Good
Steve?
afternoon.
Thank you. Let me just go on mute.
The Finance Committee is being asked to recommend to the full board the adoption of a resolution to proceed for 31-year tax exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds in an amount not to exceed $10.8 million for Gold Coast Public Library. Gold Coast Public Library is a new DASNY client and was added to the DASNY statute in 2015. The library is a special district library, which was founded in 2001 and is located in Glen Head in Nassau County. The library district is coterminous with the North Shore Central School District, less the village of Seacliff. Bond proceeds will be used to acquire an approximately 2.62 acre parcel of land at 180 Glen Head Road in Glen Head and to construct a new library building on the site. Authorizations to pledge funds raised by taxes for amounts required under the DASNY loan agreement was approved by a voter referendum held on December 8th, 2020. Funding for the library comes from real property tax revenues levied by and collected by the towns of North Hempstead and Oyster Bay. Taxes collected by the towns are paid as received to the library in 2 installments in February and August of each year. Any changes to the tax levy are submitted to the voters for approval. Once approved by the voters, the library's tax levy is considered an annual appropriation. And if the library subsequently requests an increase and the voters defeat that request, then the appropriation reverts to the amount last approved by the voters. The bonds are expected to be rated AA3 or better by Moody's. Security will include a pledge of revenues and a lockbox. The lockbox requires the library to fund in advance a debt service account as tax collections are received. The towns will send all tax receipts directly to the trustee. A portion of the library's tax receipts will be set aside by the trustee to fund the debt service fund, and the remaining balance will be transferred to the library to be used for its operations. So in summary, the library has a predictable revenue stream, and the debt service fund will be funded through the lockbox mechanism ahead of bondholder payments. Therefore, staff requests the Finance Committee to recommend approval of a resolution to proceed for a bond issue in an amount not to exceed $10.8 million on behalf of Gold Coast Public Library. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Questions or concerns?
No
Anyone?
concerns. No concerns, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at table 1, Steve, not asking you to answer this now, but maybe for tomorrow's meeting. Real property taxes form the basis of the financing for the libraries, for this library. But the other revenue line, which is the second revenue line, I'm just curious to know what comprises the other revenue. Again, not for now. You and I have talked about this already. It didn't occur to me to ask you, but it might be great to get into the record, unless I have missed it in the presentation, some of the sources of the other revenues.
They have a very heavy fine, I guess, for bringing late night books back.
Yeah, I can look more closely, Al, but yeah, generally those other revenues, they are things like late fees and grants and other items of that nature, other fundraising.
So it really is about fundraising and library book penalties.
It's like that Seinfeld episode. You remember that one where the guy had the book for like 10 years or something? And anyway,
I think the
sorry,
penalties is a very small
I
portion of that.
digress. I
Yeah.
digress.
I didn't have any other concerns either.
I had a quick question. The 11.5 that the whole thing is called, what's the split on that between the land acquisition and the building? Do we know?
Yeah, I think the land acquisition is approximately $2 million, give or take. And then the construction is, about 9. Yep.
Right. Okay. That's a reasonable split. Okay. Any other questions or concerns from anyone?
Actually, I just had one other question that, as you mentioned, the project, Jerry, there's no, I bet there's support, and this will be a voter referendum. So it's not like there's.
I think they already got it. I think it passed, right?
Yeah, okay.
That's right. They passed, and it was a good turnout for the vote, and I believe over 70% of the voters were in favor of the project.
Great.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So can I, hearing no further questions, can I please get a motion to recommend this transaction at tomorrow's full board meeting?
So moved?
Thank you. Second, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? And we welcome them as a new client to DASNY. Hopefully they'll build so many more libraries. Next up, I'm going to tell you, we're into St. John's University and Steve's back on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Finance Committee is being asked to recommend the full board to adopt a resolution to proceed for one or more series of fixed and or variable rate tax exempt and or taxable bonds with an aggregate par amount not to exceed $365 million on behalf of St. John's University. St. John's has been a DASNY client for more than 50 years and has always met its obligations to DASNY on time and in full. The Finance Committee will recall that at the May 2020 DASNY board meeting, the board adopted documents on behalf of St. John's University for a $325 million issuance. St. John's was responding proactively to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the approved financing was structured to mitigate risk with respect to its debt profile. The DASNY approval included up to $30 million of new money projects, and the balance was for refundings of certain outstanding DASNY bonds. Financing was placed on hold in June of 2020 as the university wanted to further assess and respond to the disruptions caused by COVID-19 pandemic and to ensure the plan of finance supported the university going forward. With the approval of the proposed financing, the university would no longer utilize the approvals obtained in May 2020. The proposed financing is similar to the financing approved by the DASNY board in May of 2020, with the addition of a new money project requiring additional authorization. At the same time, the university was working on the anticipated 2020 financing. It was in the planning stages for developing a new health sciences building with a planned borrowing in 2021. The university's board has approved the financing of up to $90 million of new money projects, including the new health sciences building. The health sciences project is expected to cost approximately $78 million, leaving a balance of approximately $12 million to be used for other capital projects, including deferred maintenance. These other projects may include items such as HVAC, elevator, and other infrastructure projects, renovations to existing facilities, the purchase and installation of fire and safety equipment, and technology upgrades. The new health sciences building will be constructed on the site of what is now St. Vincent's Hall, which will be demolished. The health sciences building will add support to the university's health science initiative and strategic enrollment planning, which will inject new infrastructure and programmatic space capabilities to grow the St. John's College of Pharmacy and health sciences and interdisciplinary programs. The university is adding new health science programs, which would build upon the pre-existing St. John's expertise in key areas of the health sciences and directly relate to local, regional, and national healthcare industry needs that have only been elevated during the COVID-19 crisis. In addition to the new money issuance, the university also plans to refund all or a portion of its various DASNY bonds it has outstanding. Refunding candidates are the same candidates that were approved in May of 2020. So St. John's plans to refund and fix out its variable rate Series 2008 B1 and Series 2008 B2 bonds. The 2008 B1 bonds also have a swap, which it plans to unwind. Refunding the variable rate bonds with fixed rate bonds will provide a more conservative overall debt mix in a relatively low interest rate environment and eliminate interest rate, downgrade, and renewal risk. Additional refunding candidates include the Series 2012B, Series 2013A, and Series 2015A bonds, which each have 10-year call provisions and aren't eligible for current refundings under the current tax law. Therefore, these refundings will be done either taxably or through a forward delivery. The overall financing is expected to be a combination of tax-exempt and taxable bonds. The bonds are expected to be issued in a negotiated sale. However, the university has requested the flexibility of being able to do a private placement as well. The university may choose to fund approximately 2 years of capitalized interest on the new money issuance. Subject to useful life analysis by tax counsel, there may be extensions of certain final maturities and/or some restructuring of debt principal of the refunded bonds to achieve a more level overall debt portfolio and to provide greater affordability within the existing debt service budget for the new projects requiring capital investment. If all of the refunding candidates are included, the net present value benefit is anticipated to be approximately $15 million or 6% of the bonds being refunded. The total estimated par of the proposed financing is approximately $350 million, and staff is requesting a par not to exceed $365 million to ensure that there are sufficient funds to complete the refundings and the authorized new money expenditures. Upon completion of the proposed financing, maximum annual debt service is estimated to increase moderately from approximately $39.8 million to approximately $40.7 million. The university is currently rated A3 by Moody's and A- by S&P, and the bonds are expected to be a general obligation of the university with no additional security. I'll now present some additional information regarding the operations and the audited financial statements of the university. The university is dependent on student-related charges, with 74% of 2020 revenues coming from net tuition and fees. The university averaged full-time equivalent, or FTE, enrollment of 17,527 students over the 4-year period from fall 2016 through fall of 2019. These were the 4 highest totals in the history of the university. Fall 2020 FTE enrollment declined to 16,040 students, primarily due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The university has since implemented several recruitment strategies over the past year, and enrollment planning continues in an effort to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 and improve enrollment while maintaining its admission standards. These strategies, which are outlined in the staff report, will benefit from the new health sciences building, as many of the new degree programs will be enhanced by the capital project. The already approved new academic programs are projected to grow enrollment by 480 students per year, and additional programs are in the planning stages. St. John's has a consistent history of positive operating margins, including a $13.2 million surplus in 2020, despite disruptions caused by COVID-19. Operating surpluses over the last 5 years have averaged $23 million. Despite the impact from COVID-19, the university continues to target a balanced budget for 2021, even under stressed assumptions. The university's net asset base increased from $725 million in 2016 to $936 million in 2020, primarily from an increase in investments and a decrease in long-term debt over the past 5 years. Investments were up about $100 million to approximately $750 million, and debt service decreased by about $120 million over this time period. The university's current outstanding debt of approximately $397.7 million is a 15-year low. St. John's has been strategic in funding capital projects over the past 15 years from planned reserves or gifts without the use of debt. The university's 2020 debt service coverage ratio is 2.0 times compared to the 2019 DASNY median of 1.9. So in summary, the university has requested DASNY to approve a bond issue to refund the refunding candidates I described earlier, and the ability to issue up to $90 million in new money projects, including a new health sciences building, which is expected to enhance the university's position in health sciences related industries and projected to propel enrollment. Staff is requesting the Finance Committee to recommend the board to adopt a resolution to proceed with a financing on behalf of St. John's University, an amount not to exceed $365 million to facilitate the university with its plan of finance. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions or concerns from fellow committee members or other board members? Well,
Go ahead,
Go
Chair.
Tracy.
I'll go first. I just wanted, I thought Steve did an excellent job presenting that. And if I understand it correctly, I'll just, my opinion is, St. John's has been a long time client of DASNY. I think it's prudent that they went back and relooked at the financing that they, were planning on in light of COVID. And I think that while there is, uncertainty all around, I think the project that they're putting forth with the health sciences, certainly, from my view, from the Department of Health in trying to increase workforce, I think is a good move. In light of crisis comes opportunity. I think the refinancing piece coupled with the new money, if I'm reading it right, leads to a minimum increase in their maximum annual debt service. The piece that I was not sure if I was understanding is, I guess they're going to evaluate the time they issue which of the refunding candidates they'll move forward with. And maybe if Steve or Portia could speak a little bit about that, because that will determine, the ultimate MADs, I guess, is, if I understand it correctly, because they're trying to do an aggregate level debt service.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, they're really looking at this financing as the new money project really driving the timeline. And then when they look at the refunding candidates, they're being opportunistic about those candidates based on the market at the time, at the time we issue the bonds. So, but I think regardless, they do expect there will be some inclusion of refundings in the financing. And, even if some of these refunding candidates fall out, the maximum annual debt service will still be in line with where it is today, roughly.
Okay, thank you. And they are going to consider extensions of maturities, I guess. Is that correct? Like to see if they can achieve
So
more level debt.
Minimal debt service.
yeah, regarding the extensions of maturities, I mean, while the universities request the flexibility to extend the final maturities within the limits imposed by tax code and useful life analysis, to this point, they're still not showing any extensions of the final maturities in their draft cash flows. The numbers referenced in the staff report also do not include any extensions of final maturities. So to this point, the university does not see the need to extend the maturities to achieve their desired debt profile. What's more likely to occur is the shifting of a portion of principal from earlier maturities into later maturities to achieve and maintain that MADS where it is today.
Great.
After laying on that new money.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Steve, it's Al. First of all, I concur with Tracy's comment that I think staff always does a great job of presenting the board with transaction evaluations and summaries. I thought this one was particularly good. Thank you very much for just taking the time to be thoughtful about it. I really appreciate it. The tuition dependency, I wondered if we know how that percentage is. 74% of their revenues come from tuition and fee related stuff. COVID is probably, are they on campus now?
Yes, they are on campus now. They started in late January. And, obviously they're doing a combination of in-person classes, online classes, and a hybrid of the two.
Okay.
Regarding their tuition dependency, if you look on Appendix B,
Missed it.
at the very bottom of the report, it's the next to last ratio, and it looks like in 2016 they were about 72%. 2017 they were about 71%, and then they were back to 72% in 2018 and 73% the last couple of years.
So as a percentage of total revenue, the variations in those 3 or 4 years are relatively small.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was all. Again, great job. Great job on the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions or concerns from anyone? I mean, I just wanted to note that St. John's is a very important part of the County of Queens. And so it's always a good thing when we help our neighbors in some times of difficulty. But I would agree with Tracy, that the fact that they're adding to the nursing facility, and there's, at least I'm far from the expert, but it seems from what you read, there continues to be a shortage of qualified nurses, especially during these difficult times. So hopefully that will help not only the university, but also the surrounding community. So it's a pleasure to I can't move, so I'll ask for a motion to recommend approval of this offering at tomorrow's full board meeting.
So move.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Al, thank you. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. And thank you again, Steve, for that excellent presentation. Now, Portia, I think things are looking up finally, because I see TELP financings on the agenda. And it's been a while since I've seen those exciting offerings. So we have 2 of them on. One is the Stony Brook, and that's going to be followed by Syracuse, as I remember. So thank you, Portia. Take us away.
Yep, sure thing. So the first TELT financing before the members for your consideration is on behalf of SUNY Stony Brook University Hospital in an amount not to exceed $48 million. As you know, it's a policy of the Public Authorities Control Board that TELT financings which exceed $10 million in a 12-month period be presented to the DASNY board and PACB for approval. There's an attached equipment list showing the various equipment, which includes IT, pharmacy, and other equipment. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portia. Any questions or concerns?
None
Hearing
here, sir.
none?
None,
Thank you.
none here. Yep.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to recommend approval of tomorrow's full board?
So moved.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
seconded.
Second, thank you. All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That motion carries. And last on today's full Finance Committee agenda is the SUNY TELT program for Syracuse
Yep.
University Hospital. Thank you, Portia.
So the TELT financing before the members for your consideration is on behalf of SUNY University Hospital at Syracuse in an amount not to exceed $42.5 million. Again, policy of Public Authorities Control Board is that those TELT financings which exceed $10 million in a 12-month period be presented to both the PACB and DASNY board for approval. There's an attached equipment list, including various emergency department, radiology, IT, and other equipment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Did I lose everybody?
No.
We're
So
here.
there.
We're here.
Okay, sorry. Can I get a motion to recommend approval? Thank you.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
All in favor, aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. That motion carries. So unless there's anything else on the agenda or anything that I missed, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. So find folks and proceed to the next committee meeting, which I believe is governance, if I'm not mistaken, but it's another committee.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Second, thank you. All in favor, aye.
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 None opposed. So everything, we're adjourned, and I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much there, Mr. President.
So we are at 4:48, which is after 4:45, so we can start our next meeting.
Thank you.
which
I'm
is
going to
our
sign off.
governor's-
With us today. Thank you, Deb. And we're being recorded. With us today, we have myself, Sarah Richards, Deb Fasser, Alfonso Carney, our board chair, Ruben McDaniel, Matt Moore, John Johnson, our corporate governance chair, Michael Johnson, Tara Miner from DASNY, Russell Biggs, Beryl Snyder, Caroline Griffin, Craig Schreivogel, Dina Amodio, Diane Folletti, Janice McKinney, Joan Sullivan, John Gardner, Kathy Ebert, Karen Ellinger, Kim Ellis, Paul Koopman, Portia Lee, Ricardo Salomon, Tracy Raleigh, and Russell Biggs. I believe I got everyone. If not, please speak up. Okay, very good. And now the required legal notice. As a result of the ongoing public health emergency related to COVID-19, Executive Order 202.1 as extended authorizes public boards to meet remotely and take authorized actions without permitting public in-person access to meetings. The public must have the ability to view or listen to the proceedings, and the meetings must be recorded and transcribed. An audio and video recording of today's meeting will be accessible from DASNY's website within 2 days, and today's proceedings will be transcribed and posted as soon as practicable under the circumstances. For additional information regarding the emergency declaration or the executive order, please see the DASNY website. Thank you, and I will turn it over to the chair.
Well, welcome everyone to the Governance Committee meeting. I just would begin by saying I think this is the largest single attendance of a Governance Committee meeting I ever remember. I don't know if it's a tribute to Zoom or internal boredom, but it is what it is. So the first measure we need to approve are the transcript of the the October meeting, October 14th, 2020 meeting. And I don't know, only those of us who are on the committee, and I'm sure that the only other person on the committee, officially on the committee, is Joan, as I understand it. So Joan, if you approve it, I approve it.
Sorry about that. I approve it.
All right, so we'll press on. Now, we have a series of things we need to approve on an annual basis. Call your attention, this is a more limited list that we've had in the past because we've been dividing these things that are done by rote annually to meet terms of the various statutes that we operate under. So I'm going to turn this back over to Sarah, who will take care, will explain the changes in these any proposed changes, and will guide us through these next transactions. So Sarah, you're on.
Sure, thank you.
But Sarah, before you start, Sal, John, I want to thank you and I want to thank staff. It was an excellent idea to break up these annual seriatim approvals into groups such that we didn't have to have a 4.5-hour session to discuss them and then ultimately approve them. So it's a great decision. I think staff recommended it. Sarah, you may have recommended it. I don't know how that all happened, but John, thank you. It was a great decision.
Good. I'm glad that's working out. Since we did in the fall review the governance charter, the principles, bylaws, mission statement, and performance measures, including metrics to quantify goals, and the disposition of certain property owned by DASNY, we will not consider those at all today, and we'll look at those again in the fall. So today, and at this time, the committee is being asked to conduct the annual review of certain other corporate governance items. We will look at the code for ethical conduct for board members, the policy regarding payment of compensation and reimbursements to and time and attendance of senior management, as well as the whistleblower protection policy and procedure. The agenda has the whistleblower policy and procedure in the middle, but I think it makes sense. The Code of Ethical Conduct and Policy regarding payment of compensation and reimbursement to and time and attendance of senior management are more straightforward. For both of those, staff has reviewed those two items, and subject to comment from the governance committee or other board members, no changes are recommended to those two items at this time. So I'll turn it back over to the chair to see if there are any comments, and then I'll talk about the whistleblower policy.
Does anybody, either a member of the committee or everybody else that's on, have any questions, observations, or suggestions on these two policies? We've been with these policies. They've been modified as required over the last several years, and I think that, in my view, they are current. And I recommend that we move these on to the full board for their approval tomorrow. No, they doesn't need to go to the full board. We just have to approve them annually. Excuse me.
Correct.
So is that all right with you, Joan?
Absolutely, yes. Sorry, I keep on muting.
That's all right. It keeps background noise under control. So good. So we'll move on now. We'll move on to the whistleblower. Okay, Sarah, you're on.
Okay, and staff has reviewed the whistleblower protection policy and procedure, and certain changes are recommended at this time. And to discuss those in more detail, I'm going to turn it over to President McDaniel, who can explain what those are.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Sullivan. On the whistleblower policy, you will all recall that the audit committee and internal audit recommended that we go to a single external whistleblower hotline, if you will, so that whether someone was internal or external to DASNY, they had one place to go. That the person receiving that call could then move the matter on as appropriate. So what we have done is we have modified the whistleblower policy to incorporate two things. One is that change, having one number, and that caused a couple of changes. And then second, since this was approved last time, we have started our Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But for today, we wanted to make sure that any items that came to the whistleblower hotline that were in the vein of discrimination, that would have a place for it in this policy. And so we've added the Director of Diversity and Inclusion as one of the waterfall members who can receive things depending on the nature of the policy. I was laughing with the chairman yesterday. We had 3 lawyers working on this, so I try to keep them from changing too much else. But you can only do so much. But I think the staff's done a nice job of modifying the policy to incorporate those two changes from a big picture and then making sure the policy flowed through. So we're pleased with this. We're pleased we're having one number for the whistleblower. I think our processes will be very conducive to people who either internal or external to DASNY have a place to go that is confidential, that's independent of DASNY, and then that organization makes a decision on where it goes from there. So we're very pleased with that. And this policy is simply to coordinate that. Mr. Chairman?
Now, are there any questions about any of these changes from anybody who's attending?
None here, Mr. Chairman.
All right, hearing none, then I would say that what we need to do is to approve this as a committee to move these changes on to the board tomorrow for their approval of the changes. All they have to do is approve these changes. I understand it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm good with it. Joan, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's straightforward but comprehensive. Nice job.
Excellent. All right, so that's approved. Now we'll move on to the board self-evaluation. Before we go into executive session, except for Joan, I guess, and Al and me and anybody else on the board to talk about this, I just wanted to make a couple of general observations. Is that if you'll recall, we've gone through quite a few changes over the last several years on the questions, and there's been, for the results for this year 2021, in summary, have been are generally showing a much better opinion by the board member in their self-appraisal of our performance and of the performance of DASNY and the board's understanding of what's going on. There are improvements, marginal improvements. The only area that still is there's a couple areas that are concerning to the board overall, which we'll discuss in private session. But I think that this has been despite the fact that we've been working apart for 12 months now with our new leadership and with attention to detail that's going on here. We've made some progress on the results of our self-appraisal. And I think that is a direct result of the new leadership that we have. And I think that, Ruben, we appreciate your work to get us to this point. So thank you. With that, I will ask for a motion to go into executive session to handle, the financial history and credit history and particular corporations, litigation, and the whole laundry list of things that we normally do. So I would move that. Do I have approval, Joan?
Yes, please.
All right, so Sarah, will you explain to everybody how we go into executive session, because that's out of my job description. Okay. All right, we're coming out of executive session of the governance committee meeting of the Dormitory Authority, where no action was taken other than to leave the executive session. And so for that, Joan agrees, we're going to adjourn from that, and then we'll immediately call the Atlantic Avenue Holding Corporation Governance Committee meeting to order. So with that, Joan?
I agree.
All right, we're on our way. So Sarah?
Okay, thank you. Actually, next up on the agenda is the NGHP governance.
All right, we can do that.
We have a short one in the middle. So We are recording, so I will read the roll after I read this short legal announcement. As a result of the ongoing public health emergency related to COVID-19, Executive Order 202.1 as amended authorizes public boards to meet remotely and take authorized actions without permitting public in-person access to meetings. The public must have the ability to view or listen to the proceedings, and the meetings must be recorded and transcribed. An audio and video recording of today's meeting will be accessible from DASNY's website within 2 days, and today's proceedings will be transcribed and posted as soon as practicable under the circumstances. For additional information regarding the emergency declaration or the executive order, please see the DASNY website. So unless there are any questions, I will read the roll of who is present. In addition to myself, there is Deborah Fasser, John Johnson, the chair of the Subsidiary Governance Committee, Al Carney, our board chair, Paul Koopman, Caroline Griffin, Craig Schreivogel, Dina Amodio, Diane Folletti, Jerry Romsky, Janice McKinney, Joan Sullivan, John Gardner, Karen Ellinger, Kim Ellis, Portia Lee, President Ruben McDaniel, Ricardo Salamon, and Tracy Raleigh. I believe that's everyone. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it back over to you.
The first order of business will be to adopt the minutes of our March 3rd, 2020 meeting, which I point out was in person. And so with that, Joan, are you okay with those meeting minutes?
I am okay.
Okay, so we'll move on. I'm going to turn it back to Sarah, who will walk us through the rest of the, take us through the rest of the things we have to do. Sarah?
Very good, thank you. The purpose of this meeting is to complete the annual governance committee review for the NGHP Holding Corporation subsidiary as required by the Public Authorities Law. At the time of the formation of the subsidiary, the NGHP board passed a resolution dated March 30th, 2011, adopting all policies, procedures, and guidelines of DASNY as its own. As with the DASNY Corporate Governance Committee, the NGHP Governance Committee is required to complete an annual review of the subsidiary's bylaws and mission statement, performance measures and metrics to quantify performance goals, and recommend any proposed changes to the full NGHP board for approval. Subject to comments from the committee or any board members present, staff has reviewed these documents and at this time is not recommending any changes to the bylaws or to the mission statement, performance measures, and metrics at this time. Mr. Chair.
Do I hear any other suggestions about changes to these metrics? Hearing none, then we're just going to adopt those, and we don't have to do anything further since the board doesn't have to approve those. So I will now move to we adjourn this committee meeting. Joan?
I move to adjourn it.
All right, done. Now we will call the Atlantic Avenue Holding Company meeting to order.
Okay. And
Sarah, you're on for that. Read the stuff and take the attendance.
Thank
Even though we all know what it said.
We all know what it says, and since the recording is still on and there's no members that have joined us, I will refer the members to the DASNY website for information on the executive order that allows us to participate via Zoom today. The proceedings will be transcribed and will be made available as soon as practicable under the circumstances. For purposes of the roll call, we have with us today, in addition to myself, Deb Fasser, John Johnson, our subsidiary governance chair, Al Carney, our board chair, Paul Koopman, Caroline Griffin, Craig Schreivogel, Dina Amodio, Diane Folletti, Jerry Romsky, Janice McKinney, Joan Sullivan, John Gardner, Karen Ellinger, Kim Ellis, Portia Lee, President Ruben McDaniel, Ricardo Salamon, and Tracy Raleigh. I will now turn it back to you.
All right, the first thing is to adopt the minutes of the March 3rd meeting. do I have any comments, changes, or to those minutes? And if not, a motion to accept them as distributed.
Accept the minutes.
All right, I'm approved of that, so we're done with that. Now we'll move. I think that, wait a minute, that gets us, yeah, now we have to go back to Sarah here on the metrics. So, Sarah, you're on metrics.
That's right. Thank you. The purpose of this meeting is to complete the annual governance committee review for the Atlantic Avenue Healthcare Property Holding Corporation subsidiary as required by the Public Authorities Law. At the time of formation of the subsidiary, the Atlantic Avenue Board passed a resolution dated December 13th, 2013, adopting all policies, procedures, and guidelines of DASNY as its own. The governance committee is required to complete an annual review of the subsidiary's bylaws and mission statement, performance measures and metrics to quantify performance goals, and recommend any changes proposed to the full Atlantic Avenue Board for approval. Subject to comments from the committee or any board members present, the staff has reviewed these documents and is not recommending any changes to the bylaws or the mission statement at this time. So I will pause here to see if there are comments or questions on those before moving on to the performance measures and metrics.
Any proposed changes? Hearing none, move along.
Okay. Staff is recommending a change with respect to the performance measures and metrics, and an explanatory memo to this effect was included in your board materials. Craig Schreivogel is with us today, and he will more fully explain those changes. Craig?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So before you, for your consideration, is a proposed change to the performance measures and metrics submitted annually to the New York State Authority's Budget Office by Atlantic Avenue. Included in the board materials is a memo detailing the proposed change, along with a copy of the existing and the proposed measures and metrics. And I'm here just to provide a high-level view and answer any questions you may have. So while the mission statement and the metrics measure 1 through 3 remain appropriate, it's the 4th measure that is no longer attainable due to recent changes to the interfaith lease, and we are proposing it be eliminated. So the 4th measure and metric basically speaks to interfaith rental payments covering Atlantic Avenue's costs associated with the property and helping to offset future state service contract payments. So as you recall from the December Atlantic Avenue board meeting, Interfaith and Kingsbrook were to merge into Brookdale at the end of 2020. And at the time of the merger, the interfaith lease was assigned to Brookdale and payments were reduced to a nominal monthly amount in exchange for certain considerations to the state. So with ongoing lease payments now insufficient to cover costs or offset any of the state's future service contract payments, we are recommending that this 4th measure and metric be eliminated. So those conclude my brief remarks, and I welcome any questions folks may have on this topic.
I have none. Al, do you have any?
John, I do not. Thank you very much, Craig. Thank you.
Sure thing.
All right, then I guess we need to have a motion to approve that and to recommend it, to approve that and move it to the full Atlantic Avenue board tomorrow.
And I make a recommendation to approve the changes and to move it to the full board tomorrow.
And I approve, so that takes care of that. At this point, I believe we can, Sarah, I believe we can adjourn this meeting.
You can. I would just note though, Mr. Chair, that the full meeting of the subsidiary is not until on the beginning of May.
Oh, good. All right. That's one less thing we have to do tomorrow.
Exactly.
I don't do, my wife tells me I don't do time and dates, so. Very good. So a motion to adjourn. Anybody objects? Stay in the meeting, and if not, hit the leave button. Is that the way to do it, John?
I think we could just get off. I think
Yeah,
we just
hit the leave.
Just
button.
leave? Just be out.
We just leave? We say
Just
goodbye to
leave.
everybody?
Yep,
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
everybody.
That's
Thank
that's
you,
the
everybody.
final leave. That's
All
that's the
Final
gone.
leave. We'll see everybody tomorrow morning
Thank
at
you, John.
9:30.
See you tomorrow.
Thank
Thanks so much.
Thank you.